What's up, everybody? Axe Wizard here, working on my game some more. I hit a creative flow, and I just have to make a video before I go any further. So let's just run the game and see what we've got. So right away, you can see I've got a few more ships. I changed the background. I've got ship thrusters working, and if you notice, I've got thrusters on the sides that kind of fire when you turn. And I also implemented strafing. So if I hit Q, I strafe to the left. And if I hit E, I strafe to the right. So cool, I got all that working. On top of that, I played around with, I did like a bunch of code cleanup, but as far as stuff you can see, if we hit G to get it on, we got some fighting. I got particle effects, you can see I got like explosions a little bit different. They kind of look weird, I'm still tweaking those. But, you know, work in progress. I'm not too happy with the missile trails either. But it's better than it was. So I'm happy with it. So currently, I've got some rough AI working. Nobody targets me on purpose right now. I just basically was playing around with factions and stuff like that. I started on that, but the main thing is I was working on enemy AI. And to test that, I needed to be able to have them fight. So I rigged that up. But as of right now, it's working. How did I miss all of those missiles? Holy cow. There we go. That's what we're talking about right there. Get it. There you go. That's for you. I got another missile for you right there. Oh, never mind. My light blaster took him out. Anyway, yeah. So I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out, and we're pretty much almost caught up to where we were in GameMaker. I think one more episode and I'll be caught up. So I'm excited. So let's go into what we've done. So things since last episode, I did some project code cleanup. So the big thing is I'm no longer rotating like just sprites, but I'm rotating the nodes themselves. So if we go to our 2D scene here, you can see over here on the left, we just have our sprite. Before, it was like everything was a child of the sprite, which was kind of annoying because I kept rotating the sprite. Well, I don't need to do that. I can just rotate my ship directly. It works fine. So I de-nested all of those nodes, put them back to as everything is a child of the ship. My area 2D is no longer a child of the sprite. So all that's working fine. So there's a lot more nodes on here as well. We'll get to that in a second, but that's one of the big things is I tweaked that. Restructured scenes to also, yeah, that's what I did. So yeah, I'm no longer rotating sprites in the code. So cool. Talked about those. We can get those off our list here. Oh yeah, turns out my cursor wasn't centered. So when I was running the game and I was like pointing my mouse around, my turret wasn't tracking right and it looked really weird and I couldn't figure out why. Well, it was because my cursor wasn't centered. So we go to project settings and we go to display and mouse cursor. This is where you can select what resource to use for your cursor sprite, and then this is where you can put the image hotspot. Now if you mouse over this, it says hotspot for custom. It's basically just centered, like where you want the actual click or where you want the actual you know, point to be. So if you have like a pointer cursor, or if you have like a sword or something, the point specify that point wherever that is. Since mine is a targeting reticle, mine's right in the center. So that's what we got there. Cool. Talked about that. Let's get rid of this off the list. So I'm no longer calling get weapons in process on my ship. So when there's a lot of code in here that I gotta go through, but in my process delta here, doing all this movement code, yeah. So here under action fire primary, I had a to do here that's basically every time the process event ran, or like every step, you know, it was calling get weapons, which if we expand this function here was preparing an array, getting all the children of my thing, and then seeing if it is type weapon. If it is, then add it to my array. So it it was doing that like every time process was called, which is many times a second for every ship. So I found out that I could sort of streamline that a little better. So where's my weapons? Here it is. So I switched it to be an on ready, and I'm just setting it to be get weapons. So I'm just getting my weapons as soon as the thing is ready. The reason why I didn't do that before is because I wasn't sure how Godot was working. I didn't know, like, if my ship enters the scene and it's ready, does that mean that all my nodes that I have control of are also ready? And since I was working with weapon slots, which create the weapon, I didn't know if that was going to happen or not. But I just tested it, and it's working fine. So, sweet. Let's go back and get rid of that nasty to-do. I left it there so I could talk about it. Otherwise, I was going to forget about it. So, bam. There we go. Look at that. Much cleaner. Get firing input. If action, fire primary, fire all of our weapons. Let's see. That's also a code change I forgot. So I switched my input to just use all these variables so that I can allow AI to also control ships as well. So, because in reality, when I'm doing, input, if is action pressed or whatever it was. So if we have this get player input, yeah, input is action pressed. I'm just basically getting a Boolean back. So I'm just setting this Boolean and I'm just storing it. Otherwise, I'm setting it to be false. So, and then my AI script, when we get into that, that's also setting and setting those variables. So that lets me do that fun stuff. Let's see, what do I have left to talk about here? So no longer calling get weapons. That was cleanup. Cool. So we've knocked out project and code cleanup, and then enemy AI. That's what I started on. So if we go back to ship, those action booleans there, those were done when I started doing the AI. So let's talk about AI. So if we go down here to AI control, you can see I'm kind of doing a similar approach to what I did in GameMaker. Let me fire up GameMaker. There we go. So we're back in GameMaker. So you can see I'm kind of just, I have a function that was called AI control, and I sort of broke it out into every state had its own script that it would run. And so it was kind of doing something similar to that. Now, it's slightly different in Godot, but the kind of thought process is the same. I'm still using a state engine. So if we go here to AI state idle, and expand this. So I have a variable called state. Now let's go back up to the top here so we can see that. So where is that? AI variables, right here. So we have a state, and I also declared some constants here of just what I expect those states to be. Idle, move, intercept, attack, disabled, and retreat. So that's basically what I had in GameMaker, except only idle, intercept, and attack were actually done. So I've got idle, intercept, and attack working, and there's some room for improvement there, but I think it's on par and slightly better than what it was in GameMaker. But so we're just simply tracking. We have a string, and then we have a target, which I set as type node, which is kind of like the parent node for all nodes. I thought about setting it to just ship, but I might want the ability to also target other stuff besides ships. So I just set it as type node for now. I have a to-do here. Is this the right type? I think it is for what I need, but I'll leave that. I'll just get rid of that to-do. So let's go back to the script here. So let's see. AI control. So we're running AI state idle. We're taking in delta because we're calling this from the process function, and we're just getting that delta. So we're passing that to all of these functions. We're just passing it down. So AI state idle. We're just checking. Hey, are we even supposed to be running this code? If not, just return. So if we're not state idle, then all this code doesn't run. If we are idle, we're resetting all of our input. and then we're going to decide what to do next. So we're doing the same kind of thought process that we did in GameMaker. Like, first we decide, do we have a target? And I just check if target is null or if we don't have a valid instance of target. So we don't have a target, we should find one. So this, I kind of did a little function similar to what I did in GameMaker. You know, I have closest enemy is going to be of type ship. The 0 value of this should be null because I haven't set it to anything. I could explicitly set it to null if I wanted to. But I think that's how it works. So I'll just leave that there. Then we're just setting closest distance, right? So we're just setting this to something huge. Like, this is not close at all. So we're just setting it to some arbitrary number that's super high. And what we're going to do is, let's see. This is some cleanup code I've got here. So also we should find invalid entries while iterating through the array and keep track of them. I didn't finish that comment. So I'm declaring an array here of invalid instance indices, and then I'm just going through everyone in my enemy list. So if we go back up to my code here, I have a variable called enemies that is just an array. So that's all we're doing there, is we're just going through our enemy list and finding out who we should be fighting. So once as we're iterating through, we're seeing if they're valid. If they are, then we're getting what we're basically getting a vector that is the difference, you know, from their position minus our position. So with Godot vector math here, if we scroll down here, let's see, movement, and then there we go, pointing towards a target. So this gives us a vector that sort of gives us the direction and magnitude to our target. So I was following that logic there. And so we've got that. So we're getting that difference, and then I'm just getting the length, which is the magnitude of that vector too. And I'm just simply comparing, hey, is it less than the closest distance? If it is, then we have a new closest enemy. So we're updating the closest distance, and then we're setting the closest enemy to be E. Now, if it's not a valid instance, then what I'm doing is I'm adding it to my invalid instance indices array. Now, it was named invalid instance indices. I should probably change this. I'm gonna actually change this right now because it's no longer storing indices, it's storing invalid instances. Because I found out that Godot has some nice array functions that GameMaker didn't have, so I was reinventing the wheel when I didn't need to. So let's go ahead and tweak this code so it doesn't puke on me. There we go. So we're fine. So now what we're doing is, once we loop through and we found the target, the first thing we're doing is we're taking care of cleanup. We need to iterate through backwards. Actually, we don't need to iterate backwards anymore. That was there we go. We can just get rid of that. That was a leftover relic of doing it my inefficient way. So we're just going through and we're just removing any invalid enemies from our enemies array. Now, the reason why I wasn't doing that here is because, again, I'm not sure behind the scenes how Godot does arrays, and it's typically generally a bad practice to mutate your array when you're in the middle of iterating through it. It can lead to some unexpected bugs. So I just do my read operation where I'm just reading all the data from the array, and then once I do that, I do my delete operation where I go and delete what I want from that array after I'm done using it. So that's why I did that there. So again, we check, were we able to find a target? So if closest enemy was never set, it should still be null. So if closest enemy doesn't equal null, then we have an instance. So we update our target. Cool. You know, it's code like this that makes me appreciate the sort of Python syntax where you're not doing brackets, you're just sort of indenting your code blocks. Because then we don't have like 15 million closing brackets when we get deeply nested code. So that's super nice. So after we do our target acquisition code, we're just verifying again, you know, same thing we did in GameMaker, do we actually have a target? So if target doesn't equal null, Let's see. We have so we should have determined if we have found a target yet. Do we have a target? So if target doesn't equal null, then we do have a target. Again, we're going to ensure that it's still valid. So I'm doing is instance valid target. And sort of, this is a funny thing that when I was researching, the cool thing about Godot is that it's a newer engine. So when you're working with newer languages or programming things, you need to pay attention. Like if you're Googling solutions to problems, you need to pay attention to the date that those solutions were made. So for example, I was looking back on some forum posts in like 2017 that was like, hey, how do I make sure that this node I have is valid? And they were using something like weak refs or something like that. And this was before this is instance valid function was even added to the engine. So little tidbit there, just try to, if you're looking for how to do stuff, try to be cognizant of the published date or like when that advice was given or whatnot, because since this is a new evolving engine, I mean, version 4 is coming out very soon. It's an open beta right now, like you can test it if you want, but version 4 is coming very soon. It's a rapidly evolving engine, so that means older solutions might not be the best way to do things. So try to keep that in mind, though. So we're checking is instance valid target. It's valid. Okay, cool. So what we're doing is we're getting the global position of this target, and we're just saying, hey, target global position. That's a built-in variable that is tied to the node 2D. And then we're just calculating how far away they are from us. Now, I was like, initially I was doing something like, you know, their global position minus my global position is this new vector, and then I was getting the magnitude of that vector. And then I found this distance 2 function, which kind of just does that for you. So that was pretty cool. I think I could probably actually refactor this code up here to use that. I'll do it later. I don't want to make tweaks. I just want to not get sidetracked through this because this is a lot of code. So yeah, I could probably refactor that code to use this distance 2 thing. So I'm improving as I'm going through this and learning. So fun stuff. Now, if their distance is within our attack range, now attack range is a variable that I specified at the top here. And I actually made it a variable that I can export. So for, I'm defaulting it to like 300. If we go to our ship up here, and you can see over here on the right, we have attack range. I had it set to 900 just for like testing. 300 was actually a more fun range, so you can actually see stuff happening. So if I pop this open and hit G, I got to actually see my ships moving around and like how they were actually trying to engage their targets and stuff like that. So that was a lot more beneficial for me to see that with that smaller value. And then once I was happy with how it looked, I cranked that value up, because you know some ships might not have super long range weapons, so we can set that range to be shorter. And then you know, you got like some big battleship cruisers that have super long range weapons. We can really crank that range up. So cool stuff there. Let's go back to where we were. Oh, I still have these debug print lines too. So what we're saying is, are they in range to attack? If they are, then state equals attack. And I had these debug lines because it wasn't doing anything when I was going through this originally, and I forgot why. I think it was because I wasn't returning somewhere where I needed to, was the problem. So I can get rid of these debug print lines here. If they're not in range, then I set my state to intercept, which is sort of like state move, except I'm moving to attack a target. So different AI is going to be needed for that. So we're just setting that state, and then after we're setting our state, we are returning. Like, we don't want to execute any other code. We just want to just move immediately to that next state. Now, since I'm in my AI control, I'm calling AI state idle first, which is my default, like, figure out what to do state. If it does go to intercept or attack, it will immediately do that as it executes. I don't have to wait for the next process function call. It just does that immediately. So faster decision making. Super cool. So let's see. Let's go to... Okay, so we've got... That's basically it there. The last thing for this one is I've got some to do here to define the non-combat AI behavior. This is the same spot I left off with the GameMaker AI. Is that, you know, what do you do if you don't have any enemies? Like, you know, do you in theory, I want my ships to be able to like come into the system, like, you know, hyperdrive whatever into it, and then slow down and try to like dock at a space station or a planet or something. And then when they're done with their business, they go on their merry way and they burst out of the system. They boost out of the system. So I haven't got any of that stuff implemented yet. I don't even have a planet or a space station to land on yet. So I just put a to do there. Now, if they don't have anything to do, I just set their action decelerate to true. In GameMaker, they would just keep drifting through space because they weren't doing anything. So I just set them to slow down. So that's it for idle state so far. Again, I typically use my idle state as just determining what I need to, what the AI needs to be able to do, what action to take next. And then once we go to AI state intercept, so, you know, we're trying to intercept a target so we can get close enough to engage with them. So what we're doing is same thing here. We're just saying, hey, does our state equal state intercept? If not, then just return early. Again, we're checking if we have a target. If we, I should also change this to or. Is instance valid target. So if targets equals null or it's just not valid, then we need to go back to state idle so that we can do decision making again. Now, since this is AI state idle is not called until next time around, that means that that'll be called the next time the process function fires. So I can also get rid of this debug print line that I left here. Okay, so do we have a target? No. Oh, actually, I'm actually checking that here. Okay, well, that was kind of I can just get rid of this whole debug line here, because it's the same result either way. So whether target is null or instance is just not valid, the remedial action is still the same. We still have to go back to state idle. So I'm going to get rid of that whole block there. Whew. This is like doing a little mini code review here. This is great. So let's see. Are we in range to engage? And this is where I'm doing that global position distance 2 and my target global position. And if it's less than my attack range, then we are in range. So I'm setting my accelerate and decelerate actions to false because I might still be moving. And I'm setting my state to attack. Then we can, again, we can get rid of this debug print line. We don't need that. Cool. Are we facing in the general direction of our target? So this was an improvement that I wanted to make from the GameMaker logic, is that if my state, in GameMaker, if my state was set to intercept, I just start like, you know, accelerating and then trying to move towards them. But if, you know, say for example, if my ship is facing like all the way, or the AI ship is facing all the way over here, but its target is like right here, I don't want it to start accelerating until it actually rotates. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, are we facing the direction of our target? And what I'm doing is I'm doing this get angle to, and this is like a relative angle. So if we control click this, we can actually see illustration of the returned angle. So this is my node 2D rotation, and then this is the other the global point rotation. So it's just getting this relative angle from where I'm rotated to where the vector pointing towards that point is, which is really handy. So that's what that's doing there. Let's go back to ship. Here we go. So if angle is 0, if it doesn't equal 0, that means that we're not facing our target. I'm going to say in the direction, because it's not the general, it's the direction. So if not, then we broadly facing the direction of the target. So this is, I might just switch this here to just be degree to rad, and I just want 30 degrees, because that's what I kind of know. That I don't have to do like a calculator. I'll just do it there on the fly. It's fine. So cool. So if we're within 30 degrees, we should be okay to start accelerating. I don't want it to be like you need to be facing them to start accelerating. I want it to be, you know, you can start kind of going at it. So that's how that works there. And we're setting our decelerate to, so if it's greater than that, that means that we're not facing in that direction. We need to slow down so we can rotate. So I'm setting my decelerate to true, and I'm setting my accelerate to false. And otherwise, they are somewhat in the direction we are facing. Accelerate, and I'm just doing the reverse. Accelerate true, decelerate false. Now, if the angle is greater than 0, then this is a positive value, which means that we need to rotate right. So I'm also ensuring that we don't overcorrect, which is a thing I did in GameMaker as well. You know, if we're only off a little bit and we rotate our full turn speed, I don't want to like overcorrect and then still be off. So I'm just checking that if turn speed times delta is greater than the angle. Wait, is that right? Yeah. So that means that if we rotated our full turn speed, we would overcorrect. So I'm not calling my action rotate right direct to do the rotation. I'm just manually rotating that the rest of the way so it's locked on, and then from there I am setting this to be false so that my thrusters and stuff stop thrusting. Otherwise it would still keep going and I would still keep rotating, which is not desired. So if it's a negative value, we do the same thing, except rather than adding our rotation, we're just adding the negative, so which is still subtracting. So that's all we're doing there. So that's it for the intercept. Where is, yeah, so if we're in the general direction, slow down, or if we're not in the general direction, slow down. If we're sort of facing towards them, then speed up and try to get them. So that's what we're doing there. And then the next time that the code runs, it will determine if we are within attack range again. So, and then it will eventually transition to state attack. And that's where we are here. So state attack, again, same thing. Just making sure this is the state that we're supposed to be running. If not, just return. In case we're not able to fire, just set this to false for now. So I have action fire primary weapons, which is the only fire thing I have rigged up right now. And I just set that to be false. So in case something happens, I transition into like a different state from attack, or I'm not able to actually attack, it doesn't get left on. I'm just resetting it every time this is called. So does our target still exist? We're doing code that just validates that. Hey, do we still have a target? Can we still pew pew? And let me get rid of these debug print lines. So target's not valid. Set state back to idle and return. So we're doing there. Then we're also checking, hey, are we even in range to be attacking right now? And we're doing that same distance too. If it's greater than attack range, we're not in range. So set state back to intercept and just return. So cool. So if we get past this point, if we haven't returned yet, then we are attacking. Let's slow down so we can engage. So I have a to-do here that like fighters should like strafe through. Like I don't want them to slow down. I want them to do like these runs where you just kind of go through, turn around, come back. I think that would be really cool. And now that I have the ability to actually strafe side to side, that could really add some cool dynamic attacking there. And I like the thought of that. So maybe they can like dodge incoming bullets and stuff. So that's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to that. So I'm setting my acceleration to false and my deceleration to true. So I'm slowing down. Next, are we facing our target? And I just have similar code to sort of what I had in my intercept. I'm getting that get angle to global position, and then I'm doing this absolute function here to just make sure that it's always a positive. So even if it's like negative something, I'm just turning it to whatever it is to a positive. That way I can compare if it's within a certain range. So what I'm doing here is, are we facing our target or at least close enough to shoot at them? I'm going to say to shoot at them. There we go. So what I'm saying is, if I'm going to switch this again too. So degree to rad and within 5 degrees. So if we're within 5 degrees, like, so if our rotation is within 5 degrees of, pointing towards our target, we're okay to start firing. The thing I wanted to avoid is like having to actually be, right on the money in order to fire. So I wanted to give it a little bit of leeway, because now, especially since I added the strafe ability, like, the combat dynamics are going to be really, really fun. So looking forward to that. So if it's greater than 5, this means that no, we need to determine which direction to rotate. Now, since it's the same stuff, since angle is a negative or positive depending on where we need to go, I'm just doing that stuff here. And I probably need to actually, I'm gonna I had this going before I implemented the action stuff, and I just forgot to change it. So I'm gonna do action, rotate. We're rotating right. I'm gonna say rotate right equal false, and otherwise I'm gonna switch this out to be action rotate right equals true. I don't think this is true either. This is interesting. Why are we? Yeah, I think this is a bug. I'm not meant to be firing yet because I'm still rotating. Okay, so save that. Negative value. We're not facing our. Why is this here? We're not facing our target. Let's see. Rotation plus equals ang, and we'll set action rotate right. No, rotate left equals false, and then we'll swap this out for action rotate left equals true. There we go. So if the angle is greater, otherwise we should be clear to fire. So we should keep firing. I think I might want to tweak this as well so that we're still rotating even if we're not right on the money, because how this is working right now is that once we get within 5 degrees we will start shooting, and we won't keep correcting to try to keep on there. So I need to tweak this a little bit. I'm gonna copy this, I'm gonna move this down, I'm gonna paste this here. We're good to fire. Actually, no. We're not good to fire yet. Just return. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change this so that if it's going to have this same logic that we had in intercept. So if ang doesn't equal 0, then we need that. So let me copy that. Go back here to my attack. We don't need 2 ifs. Let's see. Are we facing our target? Ang doesn't equal 0. No. Determine which way to rotate. Okay, cool. And then let's see. Are we close? Are we rotated enough to begin firing at our target? Let's see. No, we're not good to fire yet. Just return. Yes. We should be good to fire. Cool. So that's the AI there. Let me just run that and make sure that those changes work. So if we hit this and hit G. Let me stop it, and I'm going to crank up the attack range to 900 again, and we will run it again. And there we go. So if we hit G, there you go. So now they're actually engaging. This guy's getting closer to engage. He's slowing down. They're lighting him up. This guy's getting, oh my god, they're shooting me. I'm sorry. I wasn't in the way, man. So there's one big difference between what I've got here so far, than what I had in GameMaker. In GameMaker, I had it so you could only shoot people you had targeted. And I'm still debating whether or not I want to implement that again. I think I do, because it can get really messy if you're trying to not shoot a bunch of random people. But at the same time, it could be really cool if, you know, you hit somebody and then they get pissed at you and then you start throwing down. So I'm not sure which way I want to go about it. I'm really not. In GameMaker, I had it to where whenever I created a projectile, I was also passing down my enemy list to it. And then when that projectile would collide with a ship, it was running through and say, hey, are you on the list of people I gotta deal damage to? Oh, you are? Guess what? Boom. And it was dealing damage. If not, it would just ignore them and just keep flying by. And yeah, I don't know if I want to do that. So that's what I've got for AI so far. And that is, again, it's similar to what I was doing with... similar to what I was doing in GameMaker, but it's a little better, I think. Like I'm being like, for example, a little more leeway when you can start attacking, and like you know, being able to just how it moves. It's slightly noticeable, and yeah. So that's it for the AI. Now let's talk about the particles. I think that's the next thing I gotta talk about. So started on enemy AI. Yep, here we go. Last thing on the list is thruster particles and strafing. So let's go to 2D scene here. And all I did for the background was just use a different sprite. I can switch it back to what it was, but I was just wanting to get a better contrast for the particle effects. So that's all I did there. So let's go to my particles here. So let's see. So let's start with the particles I already made. So my missile trail, if you look at that, I was able to just pass in a texture. Now the texture that I was using, if we go back to sprites and we go to open game art and particles, I imported a bunch of particles and I got these. Let's see. Do I still have it open? Particle pack. Yeah, here we go. There's a particle pack that was made by Kenny. He's a really popular artist that makes lots of game assets. So if you go to Kenny, I think it's kenny.nl. Yeah, Kenny makes a lot of good, high quality stuff. So if you, let's see, where is his stuff here? Let's see, 2D game assets. So he's got tons of different stuff. You can buy them. Some of them are licensed. But most of this stuff that he made, he's got tons. Like it only shows so many, but he's got tons of great stuff. Everything from UIs, tile maps, to character sprites, to projectiles, like all sorts of good stuff. So Kenny is one of the top contributors on Open Game Art, and they make a lot of good stuff. You know, they got isometric miniature library, bunch of cool assets here. Just, he's got like everything. So if I type in space, I want to see what comes up. So I got a space kit. Look at that. It's like isometric. This is this 3D? Tags, planet ship, asset forge. Yeah. Space shooter redux. Look at that. He's got a little bit of spaceships in here and a bunch of parts to build them. That's pretty sweet. You got simple space, like a very simple space shooter. That's kind of cool. Yeah, he's got lots of stuff. I think I want to say that Vessel Forge site uses some of those assets. I think I could be wrong, but this just allows you to like generate a bunch of different ships. So what I was doing for some of my ships is I was generating them. and I was putting them into my AI art image generator, and then I was having it generate images based off of those ones that were generated before. So it's like 2 layers of generation, bro. 2 generations, man. So that's pretty cool. So I found that pack, and I loaded them in, and then from here, one thing I will note is that the ones that were on Open Game Art, when you download it, for some reason they all have a black background, and you can't like when you import them in, they still have that black background. But if you get it from his site, so if we do particle pack, if you download it here, he's got it as he also has the non-transparency images as well. So it is worth noting that on his site he has them licensed as CC0 1.0 rather than CC0 0. But he says you're free to use these game assets in any project, personal or commercial. There's no need to ask permission before using these. Giving attribution is not required, but greatly appreciated. Well, Kenny, here's your attribution. Check his stuff out. It's fantastic. He's got great assets. Definitely awesome. But yeah, since it's not required, I don't have to like disclose that in the game. I can just use those. So thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate that, Kenny. Good stuff. So let's take a look-see here. So I dragged whatever particle I wanted to use over here in the texture, and then I basically just started tweaking the scale to make sure it wasn't super huge, because I think before I had the... Let me just zoom out here. There we go. That's good. I think I had the scale set to 5 since we were just doing a pixel, and if we do that, it's like massive. So obviously that's not a good missile trail. Even if we had just one, it was still really massive. So I cranked it down to 0.05, and that was pretty good for a missile trail. Now, I'm still not sure if I like this missile trail, because, you know, it's like smoke in space. I don't know if that's really how it would work or not. I think it might be kind of cool to make some sort of futuristic, like, proton propulsion missile that has like a, I don't know, like a blue or a green thing. And maybe I might switch it to use these muzzle flashes, kind of like I did for my thruster particles. But so that's all I did there for those particles. And let me just make sure that still looks good. Yeah, that's still how I had it. So no biggie there. So let's go ahead and look at the other particles that I made. So the explosion, again, that one. This one's kind of difficult for me because I had it as, you know, it turned yellow, it started yellow, it turned red, and then it would turn gray and fade. But the problem I was running into with the gradient is that the yellow, no matter what I do, just looks green to me. And I'm colorblind slightly, so I can't tell if that's just what it's doing or what, but I even set it to be like straight yellow, like FFF F00 is the hex code. That's as yellow as you can get, and it still looks green. And I set this to be white, I think. Yeah, this should be white with like the alpha maxed, and it's still green. So I'm not too happy with that. I don't know what I have to do to make that sort of how I want it to be, but it looks okay for now. I'm just gonna keep it how it is for now. Doesn't really matter. So that's what I did with the explosions. Again, same thing. I just dragged over the particle I wanted to use, set the scale, play with the color. We're good to go. Now let's get into the fun stuff. Let's get into large ship thruster. Why is this not showing? Oh, emitting. Here we go. So this is one of the muzzle flash particle effects that he had that I just sort of swapped around, and you know, so it's not really launching particles like a trail, and I don't know really how to edit this. This seems to be just part of the file. Like this hard cutoff here looks a bit odd when it's in the context of this, but I don't even notice it when we're in game. So basically, I just have this not really moving that much. I think it's like tweaking the angle slightly. What I could probably do is that to make it even better is that I can change my emission shape to be a sphere, and I can set that to be something like 3. Whoa, that looks intense. That looks psychedelic. That looks awesome. What if we do something like, I don't know, like 1.1? Yeah, there you go. So it's like moving, and like the color changes a little bit. So that's pretty cool. I like that. That's awesome. I'm gonna save that, and let's go into my small ship thruster. And again, I just used a different muzzle flash. And I'm going to do what I did here. I'm going to go to emission shape. Set this pig to be sphere. Yeah, I think 1 looks pretty good. Let's save it and then try it just to make sure. So save. All right. I think that looks better. Like it kind of adds like a little bit more of that flicker to it, which is kind of nice. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Pretty sweet. Boom. Yeah. Cool. So that's what I did for the particles there. Now, how I rigged those up was a journey. So let's go and go back to my ship. Let's go back to my script. Whew. So you might notice here on the left, I've got a ton of thrusters. I got a rear thruster 1, 2, 3, left thruster 1, right front thruster 1, left rear thruster 1, right rear thruster 1. And the reason why those are all named that way is because if we scroll down a little bit here in my code, I have a bunch of arrays that manage all of these thrusters. Now, I was initially just implementing this with just, you know, you had like 2 or 3 thrusters in the back, and then you had 4 thrusters like left front, right front, so on and so forth. But I was like, wait a minute, bigger ships are probably going to need more thrusters. So I made the ability to have multiple. So right now, even though when we run the game and we're just rotating here, we only have, you know, the 3 thrusters in the back. We have the 2 on the sides. And those alternate when you turn, which I think is pretty cool. Adds a little bit more fun to it. We could, if we get, I do want to have like some really big, spectacular boss battleships, right? And those are probably going to have a lot. Those are going to have a lot of weapon slots. Those are going to have a lot of thruster nodes. Those are going to be dope, okay? So I wanted to have that. So I just create 5 different variables for all the 5 different type of thrusters that we would need. The ones from the rear, and then we have the left front, left rear, because we also need to control those individually. Because if you're turning, you know, you have the alternate thrusters on our side applying that force, and if you're strafing, you have both on one side applying that same force. So that's what we're doing there. So let's go to where we're doing that. So in my ready function here, which is called when the node enters the scene for the first time, I have the init thruster arrays function. So let's go find that. Actually, can I control click that and just go right to it? I can. I love Godot. This is great. Cool. And even expands it for me. So this function here, what I do is I just set up our thruster arrays. So what I'm doing is I'm using a while loop. So I'm just setting up a iterator variable here. Just an int, and then I'm doing rear thrusters first. So I'm just going through, and I'm each group should only ever have like 20 thrusters ever. Like I don't want this to last forever. That was just an arbitrary number that I just made, so I threw it in there. So like I'm thinking like the biggest baddest ship I can possibly imagine wouldn't have more than 20 rear thrusters or 20 of any other kind, for example. So what I'm doing is I'm iterating through this. So while I is less or equal to 20, that will net out to be 20 times. I am attempting to get the node that may or may not exist, because not every ship is going to have 3 thrusters. Some ships might not even have might not even have any, depending if I want to get like some weird alien ship or something. So they might not have any. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, get node or null. And what we're doing is we're just doing a rear thruster, and we're just adding our I to it. So we're starting I at 1. So this is going to be, hey, rear thruster 1. We do have a node called rear thruster 1. So we're validating it. Hey, is this thruster not null? That means that we have a usable thruster. So we append that to our array of rear thrusters. Otherwise, if something if something that we try to get is not null, so for example, if we get up to say 4 and we try to find rear thruster 4, I don't have a rear thruster 4. So therefore, thruster is gonna be null. So this is gonna pop this else. And what I'm doing here is I'm just assuming that no other usable thrusters exist. Just exit the loop here. I don't want to keep iterating through 17 extra times to get thrusters that aren't there. So I just break out of it. And then since we are in a while loop, I have to make sure that I increment my iterator variable so that I don't have an infinite loop, which is a really dangerous thing to do with while loops. And I just do the same thing for all the other ones. I just reset my iterator back to 1. Since I already declared it, I don't need to set a var in front of it. And then I'm just going through the same logic, except every time it's changing, I'm just doing, hey, we're looking for left front thrusters, and I'm adding those to my left front thrusters array. And it's the same thing for all of these. So it's a bit repetitive, ugly code, but it works. So I kept it. And the cool thing about the Godot editor is I can condense these functions down and hide them. So even though I'm clogging up everything into one single file of code, you know, I've got 604 lines of code in this file. I can condense those down and hide those. That way it's a lot easier to navigate around and find things. So fun stuff there. So that's how I'm initializing my thruster arrays. Now let's go into using them. So if we go here, let's see, this is our process function. So I have a function here called manage thrusters. And I'm calling this after we get player input or we do our AI control, which also controls input. So after we determine input, we manage our thrusters. And if I control click this bad boy, bam, look at that, manage thrusters. So what we're doing here is we're just setting whether or not we want each thruster to be actually emitting. So if we go back to one of our thruster scenes here, it has this property called emitting. Oh, hang on.
A few moments later.
Right. So thrusters. So basically, if we're accelerating or not, we're setting our thrusters are true, which is this emitting property here. And if we're not accelerating, we set it to false. Now I have this cool function here called set thruster emitting, which I have right up here. And all this does is this is just iterating through all the provided thrusters. So it takes two parameters, thrusters, which is a type array, and emitting, whether it's Boolean, true or false, whether or not we want it to work. And we're just iterating through every thruster in the thrusters array. We're saying, hey, is this instance valid? If it is, then set our emitting to be what our desired value is. So this little helper function avoids me having to copy and paste this or all this stuff. I can just set this function. It's just combining common code. So that's what that's there for. And all we're doing there is just doing that. Now, when I rotate left or right and when I strafe left or right, those have a little bit of a different, I have to be a little bit careful with those. So for example, if we look at rotate left here, I'm setting my right front thrusters to be true, and I'm setting my left rear thrusters to be true. And then if I'm not pressing those, I want those to be false, but I don't want to interfere if we're strafing. So if we're strafing to the left, that means our right front thrusters would be pushing us to the left. I don't want to set those back to false if we're in the middle of strafing. So I'm just saying, hey, if we're not strafing, then set it back to false. And that's all I'm doing there. And I'm doing this similar thing for when we're doing our strafe code. I'm setting the thrusters I want to be emitting to true. And then when I go to release that key and we're no longer trying to strafe, I'm just checking to make sure that we're not turning left or right and affecting the appropriate set of thrusters. So that's all we're doing there. And that works great. And that's what I've got going on there. So if we minimize this code here, I'm going to save it and let's run it again. You know, I think the thrusters work out pretty well. So, you know, it's a slight delay, like after I release the key, to where the thrusters are still kind of emitting some particles, and then, you know, they so I kind of like that they sort of fade out, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think the strafing is going to be a lot more noticeable when I well, I guess I can make it more noticeable. Let's see here. So ship, let's see, strafe speed, I got it set to 0.4 right now. If I crank this pig up to something like 5, you're gonna see some strafing. Okay, so check this out. We're going, and next thing you know, bam! Woo! Strafe! Nice. Cool. Look at that. And so I think for my smaller fighter ships, those are going to have a much higher strafe value. But for the bigger ships, like, you're not going to be able to just strafe back and forth. Like, you know, if I'm charging at a ship and I'm dodging bullets, I can go left or right. You know, you can't really do that with bigger ships that much. But you should still have the option. It's also kind of cool because you can sort of like drift it. So if I'm turning and then strafing at the same time, I can do like a quicker turnaround. I guess not quicker, but I can sort of instead of just having to turn around like this, or turn around while I'm still accelerating, would be a big long circle. If you are going in a certain direction and you just, like, you know, strafe it, you turn, you just basically do a quick U-turn, you know. I don't know. It's cool. It's cool. Shut up. It's awesome. All right. So that's where we are with that. Let me turn that back to 0.4 before I forget. Save it. Let's go back to my ship code here. So we talked about thrusters and particles. I think that is everything that we've done this episode. Cool. Awesome. So let's talk about stuff to do. So weapons code improvement, I did that already. Thruster particles and side thrusters, I did that too. Ship AI, I got started on that. I'm going to leave that there. And I also have a sound issue. So you might notice that I've only got about 10 ships in the game right now. But if we hit G to get it on, you can see there's a bit of distortion when the sounds play. And it gets worse the more ships you add. And the cool thing about Godot is that it has an awesome sound system. If you go down to the very bottom here and hit the audio tab, you can see we've got the master bus. I tried adding a limiter to it to see if that helped at all. It didn't really do much. Yeah, so I think I need to figure out my sound issues. So what I'm thinking is, I think I'm going to create a node, or even just maybe just have my main node handle it. That, or maybe I can have a class that has maybe I can connect it to a signal or something, and every time somebody wants to emit a sound, they just emit a signal. Whatever. There's different ways of doing it, but I want to have one node that just kind of controls all of that. So some sort of like audio manager, right? And then what it's going to do is that when you request to play a sound, you're going to have to pass in some arguments to it. So you're going to have to pass in, first of all, the ID of like what your node is, so your node instance. So for example, if I'm a ship and I want to play a sound of me shooting something, I need to pass in my ID. So I think I'm going to... so that allows me to dynamically create these nodes. So for example, if we go back to my ship node here, and we go back to ship 1, here we go. So I've got these like sound players here. Well, what I can do is, if I have the ID of that node, so if ship 1, I can have my audio manager, whenever I want to play a sound, I can create that sound an instance of the sound player 2D. I can attach it to the I can add it as a child of the ship node, and then I can set the stream to be whatever I want it to be. I can and then I can play it. Now, the audio manager would be responsible for basically making sure that we're not playing too many sounds at one time. So what would happen is we would have to keep track of every node that we've created. So we would probably create a array. And that array would, every entry in that array would probably contain a struct, or in Godot, they're called dictionaries. And it will have, you know, the ID of the actual, the ship that we attached it to, and also the ID of the actual audio instance player that, or the audio player instance that we created. And that way we can check, you know, in our process function, hey, is this still playing? If not, clear it out. And then when we go to play a sound, if this queue is basically already full, if this array of currently playing sounds is already full, what we can probably do is we can have a function to like check sort of like priority, sort of like what GameMaker had. But not quite. So I can define what priority I want. So for example, player sound should probably take priority over any other sound. So the sound of like my ship firing, or, you know, me taking damage or whatever, those are probably going to have higher priority than a non-player ship. So I could prioritize those. So what I can do is I can bump out a sound and then add mine in, or just even add it in on top of it. Maybe I can set my limit to have a slight buffer, so that I can handle those. And then, and yeah, if we're already playing a sound from a ship, we can probably just not play it, or just restart the existing node to play the new sound that we wanted to play. So that's going to take a little bit of thought and design. I haven't really seen many great like forum posts and stuff about it. So if you have any insights on managing audio, I'd be really glad to hear it, because everything I've read and every tutorial video I watched, like, I haven't seen anybody tackle this issue where there's like too many sounds playing at once. And, you know, especially in games like shoot 'em ups, or shmups as they're called, and like bullet hell games, which is, this game is probably going to be like, you know, some of these ships are going to be putting out some serious heat, and you better be able to deal with it. And if you can't stand the heat, then get out the kitchen, you know? So, yeah, I'm just not sure what I'm going to do about audio right now. I have some idea, so I'll probably just work on that next episode and see if I can get it to work. Or work on it for next episode. But next episode will probably be updating what I was able to find out or achieve there. I don't think that episode is going to be out for quite some time. I anticipate that being a pretty complex issue. So ship AI and the sound issue are the two big things I need to like finish up. I think ship AI is basically where I've left it with GameMaker. So I think as far as that, so if I run GameMaker here, oh, I should probably turn off my sound, because GameMaker's a bit loud. Yeah, so I've got my title screen. We need to actually do that. Let me go back into Godot here while the sweet song is playing. Title screen. We need to do that. Yeah, okay. So let's go to, let's see, I'm in GameMaker. So let's go to Object Controller. And let's see, create. Where did I have it? Here we go. Audio master gain. I'm going to set this to something like super small, like 0.1. Like I want this to be tiny, so you can barely hear it. There we go. So if I hit F5 and then G here, you know, we got all of our ships fighting. And yeah, the sound seems a bit rough here too, but oh god, they're all attacking me. This is bad. Oh yeah, it's left click to shoot. So I'm basically almost caught up to where I was in GameMaker. Now, obviously there's a lot more projectiles and stuff, and a lot more different ships here, but I mean, I think I'm almost at a point now where I've got my ship type defined enough that I feel comfortable duplicating it and customizing it for each of these ships. So I can add in my 9 ships again instead of just having my 1 ship like I have right now. But yeah, I'm basically caught up to where I was in GameMaker, and this is gonna blow your mind. But in GameMaker, this took me. I mean, how many episodes was I working in GameMaker? I think it was like 29 or 30 episodes in GameMaker, and each episode was probably about a half hour to an hour long. So we'll say worst case scenario, it was about 15 hours. Best case scenario, or like best case scenario, 15 hours. Worst case, it was 30 hours of developing in GameMaker. I think references doesn't have that. There's a project settings. I think here we go. Project settings. Okay, so I have project use time, which is how long I have been. I've had GameMaker open, and I don't leave GameMaker open when I'm not using it, because I'm usually playing games or something like that, and I don't want it eating up a memory. So 5 days, 2 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. So that's a lot of hours. That's a lot of hours. I think there's is that right? Is that how long I've been working on it? 5 days. 24 times 5. 120 hours. I got 120 hours into this damn game in GameMaker, and I've got, trying to think how long I've got in Godot. It can't be more than 20 hours in Godot. That's insane. Wow. That's nuts. Mind blown. Needless to say, I love Godot, and I'm enjoying this engine more and more, and it seems like every second I spend in Godot, I get like way better at it. And so I'm constantly improving little by little. And you know, something one of my jiu-jitsu coaches used to say is like, look, if you just improve by 1%, like every day, after 100 days, you're 100% better. That's pretty damn big improvement. And I feel like I'm doing a bit more than 1% with Godot, and it feels good. So, yeah. So title screen, figure out the sound issue, and then ship AI. I guess ship AI is basically done. I'm going to say stuff to do to be consider this port successful. Now, when I say port, I just mean porting my current progress from GameMaker to Godot. I don't mean like, this game is done. No, I still got a lot to do on this game. So I'm just happy that this is like, what, the 4th or 5th episode of me actually working in Godot? And we're already almost done? Sweet. Now, granted, I wasn't doing all of my code on screen like I was doing with GameMaker, because a lot of that would be boring, and it would just suck to edit. It would suck to watch. So doing these little updates is a much better way. Let me know if you actually want me to keep doing it this way, or if you want me to go back to what I was doing the old way, where I was actually coding all of this stuff and doing my thought process like in the video. So currently right now, you're just getting a recap of what I was able to figure out. The other way is I'm figuring it out on camera, and you get to witness that debacle. I can't. My brain goes so fast half the time that my speech can't even keep up. And so when I'm trying to logic stuff out, it's sometimes it's pretty difficult to watch. So I think anyway. But let me know what you guys think. If you want me to keep doing this style where I just kind of give you an update on what I've done, or if you would prefer I go back to the other method of where I'm doing everything on camera again. Anyway, I think that's it for this episode. Yeah, and if you have any ideas about this audio issue, definitely let me know. And yeah, I think I'll get started on the title screen, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.